So it's been over a year since I reviewed my last Star Wars movie, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And so far that's been my only Star Wars movie review, so it only makes logical sense that I would get to the next one, Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones.
I got a bad feeling about this.
Oh yeah. Just came out in 2002. It's the follow-up, the second prequel movie that George Lucas made, continuing the saga of young Anakin Skywalker and his descent into the dark side.
He ceased to be Anakin Skywalker and became Darth Vader.
Okay, you got that? I don't need to explain, the origin of Anakin Skywalker, how he was, conceived by the Force, and
there was no father.
His midi-chlorians are off the chart.
Even Master Yoda doesn't have a midi-chlorian count that high.
And how he won the pod race, and Darth Maul killed Qui-Gon Jinn, all that shit. No, you don't need to worry about any of that stuff. You could pick this up right here and totally ignore the Phantom Menace, and you'd be totally fine. When it comes to story, oh man, do they give you a lot of story in here. Well, not so much story in terms of character development or anything like that, but a whole crap ton of exposition that's gonna kind of weave these prequels into the original trilogy. George Lucas's master plan, right?
Everything is proceeding as I have foreseen.
Yeah, this one is pretty exposition heavy. But at the same time, it's presented to you as kind of like this mystery. It's kind of like, who's trying to kill Senator Amidala and why? And then they have to go from planet to planet. There's a lot of stuff that just doesn't make any sense. The dialogue in this movie is completely horrible.
I don't like sand.
You want to buy some death sticks?
If only Senator Amidala.
And you've probably seen this movie already, right? Who hasn't seen Star Wars Episode 2? It's notoriously one of the worst Star Wars movies. In the bottom, 3 or 4. But it's not the worst one.
No. There is another.
We'll get to that one, eventually. But at the same time, it's still Star Wars. And this came out at a time when it was wow, I can't believe it. It's 2002. When I was a kid growing up, my favorite movies were Star Wars movies. Now I'm an adult, and they're bringing these movies back to the theater, and it's how freaking exciting is this? And at the same time, we've got Lord of the Rings movies coming out too. How could this not be as epic as the Lord of the Rings movies? Well, it's pretty epic, I guess. Lots of neat, spacey, fantasy kind of Star Wars stuff going on in there, but as a movie itself, man, I hadn't seen acting this bad since Weekend at Bernie's. Okay, maybe that's a bad example, but I don't know, Ghoulies. Yeah, the acting is just shit in this movie. Let's get that out of the way. Hayden Christensen, he sucks in this movie. There's no getting around that. And I don't know whether that's because maybe he's just not that good of an actor, or if he was just poorly directed, not given the right lines to say, not allowed to perform the way that he maybe thought he should perform. I don't know. Mr. Lucas, you did some amazing things. And there are amazing things in this movie, but couldn't you have hired another director like you did for your most successful Star Wars movie and the most critically acclaimed Star Wars movie, The Empire Strikes Back? Couldn't you have done that? Because George Lucas has never, ever been a good director. He pulled it off in Star Wars in 1977, and he was so smart to sign off on the directing duties and give it to Irvin Kershner in The Empire Strikes Back. I don't know why he didn't do that for these prequels. I mean, he's at the head of this huge Lucasfilm Corporation, and they're making this series of movies that's going to make billions of dollars in the box office. Everybody's just going to kiss his ass and tell him, yep, this is 100% George, this is exactly what we need to do. Yes, sir, yes, sir. But he had the final say on everything. Unbelievable that some of this stuff got past that final say. That final, that take is good enough. The love scene in Anakin and Padme, or one of 3 or 4 love scenes on Naboo. Those are some of the most horribly acted romance scenes that I think I've ever seen in any kind of a movie. And I normally don't give a shit about that kind of stuff, and I didn't here either. I mean, I went to see Attack of the Clones in 2002, and I walked out of that movie going, wow, wasn't that cool with the monsters and the clone army and the Yoda fighting Count Dooku at the end? And wasn't that cool? And I was so distracted by all that cool stuff that I didn't really think about all that dumbass, horrible acting that took place in this movie. I was blinded by all the bells and whistles and all the smoke and mirrors, and this last viewing was like my 15th, maybe even 20th time that I've seen this film. It gets a little bit worse every time, but at the same time there's things in it that I see and I'm like, meh, that was pretty cool. Maybe and once in a while I might even catch something that's like, I never even noticed that before. That's kind of cool. But there's so much in it that's just does not make sense, and there's so much wasted time. We got 10 minutes of Obi-Wan trying to figure out where this Camino and saber dart came from. And so he's trying to get to the bottom of this mystery. It's belongs to a bounty hunter named Jango Fett. And I mean, you saw the guy fly away. And first of all, the bad guy's plan is okay, we got Darth Sidious, who we all know as the audience. We all know it's Senator, Emperor, well at this point Chancellor Palpatine, where he instructs his apprentice Count Dooku to get rid of Senator Amidala, Natalie Portman. So we got Darth Sidious at the top, and then he goes to Count Dooku. Count Dooku goes to Jango Fett, who they make clones of, and they create the clone army and all that stuff. And then Jango Fett hires Zam Wesell, who they have to fight and chase through Coruscant. But even then, she doesn't even do the actual killing herself. She uses a robot, which deploys killer worms to kill Padme. It's a needlessly complicated plan. I mean, you live in a world where people fight with laser swords, and people can fly through the air. The traffic on this planet is 3-dimensional traffic, and there's shit flying all over the place. And you don't have any kind of security system to protect your window from a fucking robot drone. We have drones now that can do way more shit than this. I mean, okay, this is 2002. Maybe they didn't think it was that advanced or whatever, but it just seems so incredibly dumb. I don't know. Okay, there's plot hole number 1, and there's many more even before that. And in the early part of the movie, we're introduced to, once again, the Jedi Council, and they're talking to Chancellor Palpatine and setting up the storyline. It's who do you think's trying to kill me? And we get our first glimpse of CGI Yoda. I think he looks okay here. Yeah, I mean, Yoda's fight scene at the end of the movie, that's one of the good points. We'll get to that later. But yeah, so we get CGI Yoda, and you get the guy with the squid head and the fucking weird crab face guy, and Mace Windu, and they're all have no idea who possibly could have tried to kill Senator Amidala. The Jedi come off as really dumb in these movies, and really not dumb, but oblivious to anything that's going on. And they even make a statement later in the movie. It's I think it's time we told the Senate that our ability to use the Force has been diminished. What? And you guys are the galactic cops. Yeah, maybe you should say something. I don't know. There's a lot to unpack in this movie. And this is going to be another long video, just like the Phantom Menace was. So, cheers. Here we go. So I guess we could start with the actors. Obi-Wan Kenobi, of course, is portrayed again by Ewan McGregor, who does a pretty good job. He's just a little bit better than he was in The Phantom Menace. He's got some really, really shitty, stupid lines in this movie, though. And it's very obvious that he's trying to emulate Sir Alec Guinness. And he's doing his best. And it's just the dialogue that he's given in the direction of this movie is so bad. His action scenes are really good. He has some good action scenes where, he jumps out the window to get the drone that's trying to assassinate Padme and seems really out of character. Like, shouldn't it be Anakin that jumps out the window to get the drone? Yeah, but then he fights Jango Fett on Kamino and learns about the clone army and all that stuff and does all that dumbass detective work where he's like in the Jedi temple trying to find out about the planet of Kamino and goes to the diner to see the big greasy six-armed dude that, I'm talking about, Jester, or whatever the hell his name is. And then he ends up on Geonosis and he gets captured by Count Dooku. Anyway, there's a certain classiness to how Ewan McGregor portrays the character, but there's a huge cheesy edge to it. It's like, I get it. Yeah, he's okay. Heretofore unknown actor Hayden Christensen. Oh my god. It was so hard to take this guy seriously. Especially with the little ponytail and the little Padawan braid thing hanging down. And his semi-serious, angsty teen delivery of the lines.
He's holding me back! And not just the men, but the women. And the children, too.
Just so bad. So incredibly bad. He's supposed to be 19, but he's more like a kid in this movie than anything. But yet he's like a creepy pervert anytime he's talking to Padme. And by the end of the movie, Padme falls in love with that creepy pervert because he just hounded her so much that she just couldn't say no anymore. I don't know, what the hell. It is by far the least realistic romance story that I think I've ever seen. And Padme. Natalie Portman. I like Natalie Portman. I've seen her in a lot of stuff that I enjoyed. She was by far one of the worst characters in this movie. Actually, no. You know what? She was still better than Hayden Christensen. But, she wasn't worse. But yeah, I don't know. It's so dumb. So incredibly dumb. But what's she gonna do? She's a young up-and-coming actress. You're in one of the biggest productions ever. What are you gonna say no to the director? You're gonna say, no, I think that sounds really dumb. I don't think my character would say that. How dare you step up to George Lucas and say something like that? So I don't blame any of these actors, even Hayden Christensen, because I've seen him in other stuff where he's actually quite good. But in this, he's terrible. Natalie Portman is terrible. Even Ewan McGregor, who I think is a world-class actor. And even he is taken down a notch by the stupid shit that he has to say. Other actors, Samuel L. Jackson, boring as shit in this movie. Yeah, I guess he's kind of badass when he fights and stuff, but his dialogue's pretty bad. He doesn't get much to say, for one thing. Ian McDiarmid as Chancellor Palpatine. He's okay, but even he doesn't really get that much screen time in this. Most of this is focused on Obi-Wan and Anakin. And Padme. Oh, but don't forget, we also get Anthony Daniels returns as C-3PO, who is completely pointless in this movie. And there's no reason for him to be in here at all, except for comic relief. And he is not fucking funny at all in this movie. As a matter of fact, this is probably his worst movie.
Chewie, take the professor in the back and plug him into the hyperdrive.
Just because they stick him in, CGI him in, in the robot factory, where he gets his head knocked off and replaced with a battle droid head, and they put his head on a battle droid, and he gets all these fucking cheesy lines that just... Oh yeah, and Jar Jar. Jar Jar, mercifully, is barely in this. He has, I don't know, I guess like 3 minutes of screen time or something like that. He walks around in a dress and says some stupid shit in the beginning.
Misa accept this with more humility and...
Padme makes him her, like, assistant or stand-in senator. And then he's the idiot that fucking votes in emergency powers for the Chancellor to create the clone army and start the Clone Wars. And so really the Clone Wars are Jar Jar's fault. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they paid attention to the backlash they got from that first movie. And they said, well, let's maybe not put him in there so much. Let's put C-3PO in there instead. And kids are going to love that. It's a nightmare. This is such a drag. Yeah, Attack of the Clones has so much stupid shit in it. Stupid jokes, horrible dialogue, things that just waste time on screen just to get the running time going further. But what it does have is it has really cool set pieces. And what I mean by that is, like, you have some cool scenes. Like, you have... You know, in Coruscant, they have the 3D speeder battle or whatever, where they're flying between the buildings and they're dropping out onto other cars and things and speeders, and that's kind of exciting. That's new. You never saw anything like that in Star Wars before. There isn't like a really big like space battle in this, but there is a cool like asteroid field chase between Obi-Wan and Jango Fett. Which has some of the coolest sound effects I think I've ever heard in my life. With the seismic charges, you know, the... That was cool. Then you get, like, the fight between Jango Fett and Obi-Wan in the rain on the towers in Camino, and they're fighting in the rain, and they're swinging around on these platforms, and that was exciting and cool. Then on Geonosis, you get the arena battle where they have to fight the 3 different creatures, and one of the coolest scenes in any Star Wars movie, I think. It was obviously all CGI stuff, but it was very imaginative, and there was some over-the-top stupid shit that happened in that scene, but it looked really cool. The monsters were really neat, you know, and then you get like a mass Jedi battle at the end, and then the army comes in, and you get a full-scale war going on between droids and clones and Jedi, and then at the very end you get like a Jedi showdown. You get Obi-Wan and Anakin versus Count Dooku, and Count Dooku beats the shit out of both of them and cuts off Anakin's arm, and they're both laying there all passed out, and like Dooku's about to kill them, and then Yoda steps in, saves the day, pulls out his lightsaber, and like basically goes to town and fucking flipping around and shit and jumping off stuff and spinning around. And that was one of the coolest things I ever saw. When I saw that in the theater, I was like, wow, man, that's awesome. Who would have thought that little green, little old frail guy from The Empire Strikes Back, who would have thought he could do shit like that? There's so much cool shit in this movie that I can't like fail a Star Wars movie. I can't give a Star Wars movie like an F. There's no way. I've loved Star Wars since I was 6 years old.
I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old.
This was at a time when this was the 5th Star Wars movie. This was only the 5th Star Wars anything that you'd ever seen. Well, I guess there was like the Ewok cartoon, Ewok movies, the holiday special. Don't forget droids. But my point is, we weren't so saturated with Star Wars. We weren't able to be quite so picky about exactly what Star Wars meant to everybody and classify everything and judge it against the other movie. Well, of course, if we're judging this movie, everybody's judged this movie, and everybody hates this movie. I don't hate it. I can't give it an F. But at the same time, I can't give it anything higher than, let's say, I don't know, a C+. Because they certainly tried. I mean, when I first saw it, I thought maybe it was a great movie. But now, like 15, 20 viewings later, it's gone below being just a merely good movie to a very, very flawed, mediocre movie. Even in the whole Star Wars universe, there's been so much more that's come out that's way better than this. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and give Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, a C+. I hope that doesn't disappoint anybody. I hope you weren't thinking I was gonna give it a lower rating. Cause hey, I like Star Wars, shut up. But at the same time, I can't go any higher. I mean, I'm not that big of an idiot. I mean, fool me once, Phantom Menace, shame on you. Fool me twice, Attack of the Clones, shame on me. But it's not that bad. It's a C+. So anyway, I hope it's not going to be another full year before I get to Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, which I'd have to say is a little bit better than this one. Actually, quite a bit better. But until then, or until my next regular video, I guess everybody have a good one out there, and may the Force be with you.